You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow, and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
In 1982, the world believed lunar missions were over, until 3 astronauts vanished behind the moon's far side. Commander Neil Rourke and his team embarked on a top-secret voyage to investigate a mysterious energy signature. What they discovered was unlike anything in human history, a silent structure half buried in ancient dust, and a phenomenon that defied all explanation. 2 souls would make it back to Earth, forever changed, carrying a confession that challenges everything we thought we knew about space and silence. This is their story of courage, cosmic horror, and the warning they were forced to deliver from the darkness beyond our sight. If you crave true style mysteries, forbidden discoveries, and confessions that chill you to the bone, subscribe to Soul Studios and turn on notifications, because some shadows were never meant to be found. There were 3 of us who went to the far side of the moon in 1982 on a mission that officially never happened. My name is Commander Neil Rourke, and for over 40 years I have kept the secret of what we found there. Now, on my deathbed, I'm finally ready to tell the truth. We launched in absolute secrecy. The world believed the moon missions were over, but Operation Mimir was different. Covert, unacknowledged, funded in the shadows. In the late 1970s, Soviet lunar scans had picked up something strange on the far side of the moon. An anomaly, an energy signature too regular and strong to be natural. The Soviets never announced it publicly, but our intelligence caught wind. Whatever it was artificial. And in the dead of night on September 15, 1982, I and 2 others left Earth to find it. I remember peering out the tiny window as our spacecraft slipped into lunar orbit, approaching the night-shrouded far side. Unlike the familiar face of the moon that beams down on Earth, the far side is an alien world of endless craters and shadowy highlands, untouched by human boots, until us. As we passed into the moon's shadow, the Earth vanished below the horizon. Suddenly, we were utterly alone, cut off. No radio contact with mission control while behind the moon, just static and the sound of my own breathing. It was in that darkness that I first felt it. A deep, inexplicable unease, as if we were trespassers in a place not meant for us. Our crew consisted of 3. I was mission commander. Dr. Elena Vasquez was our lunar geologist and astronaut scientist, a brilliant and fearless woman determined to discover whatever secrets the moon held. Major Jack Harper was our pilot, a steady Air Force veteran who had seen combat and prided himself on never rattling. We were the best of the best. Yet as we prepared to descend to the lunar surface near the source of the anomaly, I heard a slight tremor in Jack's voice over the comm. Perhaps he felt it too, that something about this mission was profoundly different and dangerous in ways we couldn't define. We touched down on the far side at the edge of an ancient crater under the long shadows of lunar dawn. Our landing site was a desolate grey plain hemmed in by jagged crater walls. In the distance, a sheer ridge rose against the starry sky, marking the outer rim of a crater named Daedalus. The anomaly's coordinates were just beyond that ridge, and even from our landing spot, our instruments picked up faint spikes of radiation and electromagnetic interference. Nothing deadly, but clearly structured, pulsing on a fixed interval like a heartbeat. It was coming from somewhere within that crater. Stepping out onto the lunar surface felt like entering a cathedral of absolute silence. There is no atmosphere on the moon, no sound except the ones we carried with us. My breath sounded unnaturally loud in my helmet, and the crunch of regolith under my boots was transmitted only through vibrations in my suit. We moved in slow, loping bounds in the low gravity, each footstep kicking up a spray of fine grey dust that hung in the airless environment longer than it should. The sun was low on the horizon behind us, painting the stark landscape in harsh light and inky black shadows. The sky above was a pitch-black void studded with an ocean of stars, more than I had ever seen on Earth. Without Earth in the sky and with the sun creeping along the horizon, the stars felt oppressively close and bright. I remember how Elena paused to look up at that sky, marvelling at the Milky Way arsing overhead. It should have been beautiful, but at the time, all I felt was a prickling anxiety, a sense that those stars were watching us back. We trekked toward the ridge of Daedalus Crater, following the signal. Jack drove our small lunar rover while Elena and I held on, scanning the readings. With each passing minute, the signal grew stronger, more erratic. Our comms crackled occasionally with static bursts that made Jack wince. Twice, he asked if we'd heard a strange whining noise on the radio, but Elena and I hadn't, at least not then. As we crested the ridge and looked down into the crater, our breath caught. There, on the crater floor, was something that could not be natural. Amidst the chaos of rocks and dust was a structure, angular, protruding from the grey dust like a black dagger. Even from a distance, its sides glinted with a dull metallic sheen. It was at least several stories tall, partially buried in the regolith, and unlike anything human eyes had seen before. We had to blink and double-check that it wasn't a shadow trick, but our equipment confirmed it. Metal where there should only be rock. A pang of awe and fear hit me in equal measure. Elena whispered, "My God, it's real," her voice crackling in my ear. Jack muttered a curse under his breath. In that moment, we knew for certain that an alien artifact stood before us, and we had no idea what else might be waiting inside it. We parked the rover on the slope and proceeded on foot, cautious step by cautious step. The structure jutted at an angle, as if whatever it was had crashed or grown there eons ago and had since been half swallowed by the moon's surface. Up close, its material looked blacker than coal, a darkness that seemed to drink in the sunlight. I ran a gloved hand over part of it, smooth, unnaturally cold, with grooves that felt almost like carvings. Elena knelt down to brush away dust from what looked like markings near what we assumed was an entrance. As she cleared the surface, strange symbols became visible, faintly etched into the metal. They were unlike any writing system from Earth, jagged lines and geometric shapes in patterns that made my eyes swim if I stared too long. "Are you getting this on camera?" I asked, my voice hushed without meaning to be. Jack was hovering near us, filming with the chest-mounted camera on his suit. He gave a short, tense nod. "Every bit of it," he said. His usual confident drawl was subdued. Elena wondered aloud if the symbols might be a warning or instructions. We had no way to know. Our mission protocols had contingencies for contact with non-human artifacts, but reading alien languages was not one of our skills. Still, we were scientists and explorers. We had to go inside. I wish now that we had turned back then, while we still had the chance. But we pressed on, oblivious to the nightmare waiting for us. A gaping fissure on the side of the structure provided an entry point, a narrow crack, just wide enough for us to squeeze through one at a time. It looked like some ancient impact or seismic event had fractured the structure here. Beyond the fissure was darkness. I switched on my suit's shoulder lights, and so did the others, our beams cutting into the stale blackness within. I stepped through first, with Elena and Jack close behind. Immediately, our boots clanked onto something solid, an interior floor. We were inside an alien building on the moon. The thought was surreal. My heart pounded against my ribs as I struggled to keep my breathing steady. The interior was a cavernous chamber that extended deeper than our lights could penetrate, roughly cylindrical walls curving up and out of sight. The beam of my flashlight danced across the floor and caught more of those symbols carved into panels under a thin layer of dust. Here and there, faint lights glowed on the walls, tiny points of red and white, flickering like dying stars. The air, or rather the vacuum, felt different in here, as if the emptiness itself was heavier. We moved carefully, each step echoing as a dull vibration through our suits. Elena was filming with her handheld camera now, sweeping it over the walls. "Houston, are you seeing this?" she asked, forgetting for a moment that we had no live link to Earth on the far side. We were alone with this thing. "Let's stick together," I warned, noticing Jack had wandered a few steps to one side, drawn by something on the wall. His helmet lights illuminated what looked like a console or control panel embedded in the curvature of the chamber. He waved us over. "This might be a control interface of some kind," he said. As we approached, Elena marveled at it. The console was subtle, almost flush with the wall, marked by a grid of those alien glyphs around what could have been buttons or touch panels. She gently hovered her gloved fingers over one, not quite touching. "Careful," I said, my voice tight. We had no idea what anything did. Triggering something accidentally was a terrifying prospect. While Elena examined the console, I scanned the chamber with a portable sensor. The EM readings were spiking slightly, likely due to active technology around us. A soft electrical hum became audible in our suits, like the faint buzz of a fluorescent light, or was it just in my head? I couldn't tell. The unnatural silence of the moon can play tricks. My mind kept trying to fill it with something. Jack turned in a slow circle, his beam slicing through the dark. "There's a corridor or tunnel over here," he said. On the far side of the chamber, opposite our entry fissure, the wall opened into a long hallway that disappeared into pitch black. The floor there sloped gently downward. That seemed likely to lead toward the source of the energy reading deeper in. We convened, shining our lights down that yawning corridor. None of us spoke for a moment. The path beckoned, but who knew what lay beyond? "All right," I said finally, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "We go in a little further, slow and easy. We document everything and get out. Mission priority is information gathering, not pushing our luck." Elena and Jack both acknowledged. We were all feeling the tension, but curiosity and duty pressed us on. We proceeded down the corridor, side by side. The hallway walls had more of those intermittent little lights, some flickering weakly. Our footsteps rang dully on the metal floor. Every few meters the corridor would curve or angle, almost labyrinthine. We left a trail of boot prints in the thin dust coating, and I scratched a small arrow on a wall panel with a knife to mark our way out, just in case. As we ventured further, the static in our comms became more pronounced. Soft pops and hisses. At one point a burst of static made me jump. It sounded vaguely like a whisper. I froze, holding up a fist to stop the others. "Did you hear that?" I hissed. We stood in the darkness, lights swaying. Elena and Jack were quiet for a moment. I don't hear anything now," Elena replied. Jack added uneasily, "Maybe interference, or the metal cooling." It almost sounded like a voice. We each had heard something, but none of us wanted to say it clearly. It had sounded like a voice speaking in the static, just at the threshold of hearing. A chill crept down my spine. We pressed on, more slowly now. After what felt like an eternity of creeping through darkness, in reality maybe only 30 or 40 meters, we reached another chamber. This one was smaller, circular, with a domed ceiling. At its center, our lights revealed something extraordinary. A hovering orb of light, suspended a meter above a pedestal-like column. The orb was about the size of a basketball, and it glowed a pale, ethereal white. It wasn't blinding. Rather, it was a soft light, yet it illuminated the chamber in a ghostly glow. The surface of the orb rippled gently, like plasma or liquid light. We stood transfixed at the threshold of the room. This had to be the source of the energy reading, because my Geiger counter was clicking softly and the EM monitor was going off the charts. Elena exhaled in astonishment. This is it." Jack took an involuntary step back. "What the hell is that? It's floating," he whispered. Even as he spoke, I noticed something unnerving. The stars visible through a crack in the dome above were disappearing. Through that gap in the ceiling, I should have seen a scatter of stars, but instead it was as if someone had spilled ink across the sky. A patch of pure blackness was spreading overhead, directly above the orb, blotting out the starlight. "Guys," I said, voice cracking, "the stars? Look." I pointed up. Elena tilted her head back and let out a small gasp. Jack muttered another curse. The orb was doing something, perhaps an energy field interfering with our view, or an expanding aura of darkness. The chamber felt suddenly much colder. Before I could say anything else, Elena, ever the scientist, tried to communicate. She stepped forward slowly, one hand raised palm out as if approaching a wild animal. "Hello," she said softly, her voice carried by her suit radio, uncertain if anything could hear. "We come in peace. Can you understand me?" "Doc, be careful," Jack cautioned, his breathing audible and fast. I had an instinct to pull her back, but I also felt paralyzed by the surreal sight before us. The orb pulsed faintly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a noise filled our helmets, a high-pitched tone rising in volume. It was like feedback whining, sharp enough to make me grit my teeth. Elena cried out and clutched at her helmet. Jack staggered, shouting, "Turn it off!" We all thought something was wrong with our radios. The sound was drilling into my ears. I fumbled at my suit controls, trying to adjust frequencies, but it did nothing. The sound wasn't coming through our comms at all. It was being generated within our very minds. I realized this with horror. It felt like an ice pick in my skull. Just as abruptly as it started, the noise ceased. We were left panting, hearts racing. "What was that?" Jack groaned. Elena's voice trembled. "Some kind of communication or a defense mechanism." I was about to order us to back out and leave when Jack's beam swung erratically around the room. Where is the exit?" he stammered. I turned and felt my stomach drop. The corridor we had come through was gone. In the curved wall behind us there was no sign of the doorway or tunnel, just unbroken black surface. Impossible, I thought. We came through right here. I rushed to the wall, running my gloved hands over what should have been the opening. It was solid. Elena joined me, frantically feeling for a seam. "No, no, no! We didn't imagine that hallway," she insisted, voice rising in panic. Jack started banging on the wall with a gloved fist. "It sealed us in? How? It was open a second ago." Suddenly, a new light flickered in the chamber, panels on the walls lighting up with symbols glowing red. The orb at the center bobbed slightly, as if reacting to our panic. My heart thundered. Were we trapped? I forced myself to breathe slowly, trying to think. "Stay calm," I ordered, though my own voice quavered. "Look for another way out. This might be some kind of door mechanism." Elena's breathing was getting rapid. I could hear the onset of fear. We circled the room's perimeter, searching for any hint of a doorway. The glowing red symbols cast erratic shadows as we moved. Jack shone his light up toward the dome. Maybe we could climb out the crack in the ceiling where we saw the stars? It was too high, and who knew if that gap was even big enough, or led anywhere safe. As we came back around toward the orb, something even more disturbing happened. The orb dimmed, and the chamber plunged into near darkness. Our suit lights barely pierced it. I turned mine toward the orb and saw it had changed from white to a deep, throbbing red. It reminded me of a heartbeat again, pulsing slowly. And then, in the silence, we heard a sound that defied reality. A voice, speaking through the static in our comms, but it was not Houston, not any of us. At first it was just a garbled murmur, like a badly tuned radio picking up a distant transmission. Then it sharpened and I recognized it. Jack! The voice was soft, crackling. It was unmistakably the voice of Jack's wife. "Jack! Why did you leave me here, Jack?" The blood drained from my face. Jack froze, staring at the orb. "Marcy," he whispered, barely audible. His wife's name. But his wife was safe on Earth. There was no way. Elena looked at me with wide eyes through her visor. It's not real, Jack. It's not her," she said urgently, grabbing his arm. But Jack was transfixed. The voice came again, more urgent, and now I heard other tones mingling in the static, faint cries, whispers of our names even. I heard "Neil" in a guttural rasp that made me recoil. I can't be sure, but in that medley of crackling voices I thought I heard my late father's voice and others I knew to be gone. It was as if the dead or distant were speaking to us through the void. Jack suddenly broke free of Elena's grip. "Marcy?" he shouted, turning toward one of the walls as if he could run to the source. Before I could stop him, he rushed into the darkness at the edge of the chamber. It was madness. There was nowhere to run except the walls. But in his mind, maybe he saw something we didn't. His figure disappeared beyond the halo of light around the orb. "Jack, stop!" I yelled, bolting after him. Elena followed close behind. We found Jack at the far side of the chamber, pressing both hands against the wall, screaming incoherently. The static voices had stopped, but he was in some kind of delirium. "We have to get out! We have to get out! It's her! She's stuck! She's in here!" He was babbling. I grabbed him by the shoulders. His head whipped around to face me, eyes wild behind his visor, and for a terrifying moment he looked right through me, as if I wasn't even there, like he was seeing something awful right behind me. "Elena, help me restrain him!" I shouted, trying to hold Jack back from hurting himself. But Jack suddenly went rigid and let out a choking gasp. His gloved hands moved to his helmet, clawing at the neck ring. At first I didn't understand what he was doing. Then I saw the thin wisps of vapour inside his helmet and my heart nearly stopped. He was breaking the seal. "Jack, no!" Elena screamed. In one wrenching motion, Jack unlocked his helmet and tore it off. In the airlessness of the moon, his scream never made a sound. Instantly, the saliva on his tongue and the tears in his eyes began to boil off in the vacuum. His face contorted in agony as the blood vessels in his skin burst into a fine red mist. Elena lunged toward him, but it was too late. Jack collapsed to the floor, twitching. I stood in horror, watching the life fade from his eyes. In the dim red glow of the orb, I saw his face swelling and his mouth opening and closing soundlessly like a suffocating fish. Within seconds, he stopped moving. Major Jack Harper was dead, killed not by an alien monster, but by whatever nightmare or compulsion had driven him to remove his own helmet. My vision blurred with tears that couldn't fall in the vacuum. I had to drag Elena away from Jack's body. She was sobbing and calling his name, her cries thin and tinny over the radio. I knew staying would only doom us as well. The orb's light had shifted back to that pallid white, as if satiated. The door that had sealed shut was open again, a dark maw leading back into the corridor as silently as it had closed. It was as if the structure itself had wanted one of us. "Neil, we can't just leave him," Elena cried. Her gloved hand rested on Jack's motionless chest. I forced myself to look away from Jack's face. The sight would haunt me forever, his bulging, blood-flecked eyes staring into nothing. "We'll come back for him," I lied. "Right now, we have to move, or we'll end up the same." Deep down, I doubted we would ever see our friend again. Elena choked back her grief and nodded weakly. Together, we staggered back into the corridor, away from that cursed chamber and Jack's corpse. My hands were shaking, and it took all my focus to retrace our steps. I glanced at our suit oxygen levels. Adrenaline had made us breathe hard, but we still had time. We needed to get back to the lander and leave immediately. "We're aborting," I said, my voice hollow. "We've gathered enough. This is too dangerous." Elena, voice flat and distant, agreed. Yes, we have to go. We have to warn. We can't stay here." Gone was her scientific bravado. She was terrified, as was I. We hurried back through the labyrinth of corridors, following the arrows and scuffs we'd left. The structure seemed subtly changed. Passages that we remembered now felt longer or angled differently. Once, I swore we passed the same junction twice, as if the interior was shifting around us. Probably just panic playing tricks, I told myself. At every turn, I expected the walls to close in or the orb to reappear. That accursed whispering occasionally flitted at the edge of hearing, snatches of words or familiar voices. We tried to ignore it and pressed on, our only goal to reach the exit fissure. At last, a sliver of grey light appeared ahead. We squeezed back out through the crack in the hull and practically fell onto the lunar surface. Never have I felt such relief to be back in the open, barren wasteland of the moon. Outside, the sunlight had shifted. It was lunar mid-morning now, the sun higher but still casting long shadows in the crater. We had left Jack's body behind in the darkness. I had to shove the guilt down and focus on keeping Elena and myself alive. We loped toward the parked rover and clambered on. Elena was quietly praying in Spanish. I radioed to our lander, hoping the small relay satellite we'd deployed could send a signal to Earth. "Rourke to Mimir lander. Mission abort. Emergency evac. Prepare for immediate launch," I called, voice tight. Through bursts of static, I caught Houston's startled reply. "Rourke, say again? Abort? Please confirm status. They hadn't been expecting us for hours yet." "I say again, abort mission," I barked. "One crew down. We are in danger." There was a pause, then a grave reply. "Understood. Get to the lander. We are ready to assist." Within minutes, we had reached the lander. We climbed the ladder and sealed the hatch behind us, securing ourselves in the cramped cabin. I threw myself into the pilot's seat and began the launch prep at record speed. Inside, we sealed the hatch and I began the launch sequence with shaking hands. Flip switches, check fuel pressure, arm the ascent engine. Muscle memory guided me through the motions. Elena strapped in opposite me, her eyes unfocused and body trembling. I was seconds from igniting the engine when a blinding white glow washed over the cabin. Through the small triangular window, an orb of light drifted into view, rising from the ground to hover at eye level with us. It was mere yards away, floating in silence just outside our lander. We both stared, transfixed and terrified. The orb pulsated slowly. Around it, the black sky seemed to bleed outward, devouring the stars in a halo of darkness. It was as if the night itself had come alive around the glowing sphere. My mouth went dry. Elena let out a soft sob. I will never forget the way it hung there, like an eye watching us. For a moment, none of us moved. Then, in the stillness, a voice came through our cabin radio, deep, distorted, and layered with an eerie echo. It spoke one word: leave. The voice was unlike any human voice, yet we understood it. Elena gasped, covering her helmet with her arms as if to block out the sound. A chill shot through me. Somehow it was speaking to us. I didn't need any further convincing. With trembling fingers, I hit the ignition. "Hang on," I warned. Our ascent engine roared to life beneath us. The module jolted upward, rising off the lunar surface. As we ascended, I looked back to the window. The orb remained hovering in place, watching our departure. It made no attempt to follow. Instead, its brilliant white began to dim, turning into a dull red ember against the pitch-black sky. Within seconds it was gone. Whether it extinguished itself or simply shot away, I don't know. The stars gradually reappeared where the darkness around it had been. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. We were clear. We were alive, leaving that nightmare behind. Part of me couldn't believe it had let us go. Perhaps it wanted someone to live to tell of this, of its warning. I plotted a direct course to rendezvous with our orbiting command module. My hands were steady on the controls out of sheer necessity, though my mind was buzzing with fear and shock. Elena was silent, curled up in her seat, eyes closed and lips moving in prayer or delirium. Minutes later, we aligned with the command module that had been autonomously circling above. Docking was a blur. By some miracle, I managed to latch on and secure our passage home. When we finally cleared the far side and regained full radio contact with Houston, they were clamoring for answers. I gave them the barest report. Encountered unknown object. Harper is dead. We are coming home. They pressed for details, but I was in no state to explain. In truth, Elena was barely responsive by then, staring blankly, occasionally shaking as if in a nightmare. I had to fly the spacecraft home essentially alone. Every time I closed my eyes, even for a moment, I saw images from that place. Jack's face distorted in terror, the orb pulsing in the dark, the stars snuffed out above us. And one more thing. As we left the moon, I thought I heard a final whisper in my mind, not through the radio. It was cold and clear. Leave and never return. Whether it was my imagination or some telepathic message from that orb, I'll never know for sure, but I felt it branded into my very soul. The trip back to Earth was a haze of fear, grief, and confusion. Elena never spoke a single word on the journey home. She just stared at the wall, or sometimes softly murmured to herself. By the time we splashed down in the Pacific, she was in a catatonic stupor. They had to lift her out of the capsule. We were whisked away to a secure military hospital before even seeing our families. Doctors examined us under hush-hush protocols. The government men, suits with thin smiles, were there too, ready to debrief. They separated me from Elena. I later learned she was moved to a psychiatric ward. The debriefings felt as surreal as the mission. I sat in a sterile room for days, repeating our story to NASA officials, generals, and intelligence officers who watched me with narrowed, skeptical eyes. I told them everything I could, the structure, the impossible technology, the orb of light, the hallucinations, how Jack died. I'm not sure they wanted to believe me. Some insinuated that perhaps we encountered a gas leak or that isolation had made us hysterical. Then I showed them our recorded footage and biometric readings. Much of the video was glitchy, distorted by radiation or interference, but it was enough. They saw the dark corridor, the brief image of the orb flaring, the moment Jack screamed and took off his helmet, though the camera cut out soon after. They had our suit data showing inexplicable EM spikes and our heart rates spiking off the charts. In the end, it didn't matter what they believed. The mission was classified top secret, buried under who knows how many layers. They told me in no uncertain terms that I was never to speak of it. A cover story was crafted, an equipment failure during a classified space operation, resulting in the deaths of Dr. Vasquez and Major Harper. Their families were told a sanitized hero's tale, and I was praised as the lone survivor of a tragic accident. They gave me a medal that I've never looked at since. They needn't have threatened me to keep quiet. I was plenty afraid to ever bring it up. Who would believe it anyway? And if someone did, I worried it might tempt them to go back there to prove me right. It never faded, though. The experience, the terror. I relived it over and over. Elena remained in a psychiatric facility, never regaining her grip on reality. In rare moments of lucidity, she would draw those strange symbols on the walls or scream about lights in the dark. She died 10 years later in that hospital, her mind never having left the moon. As for me, I tried to bury it. I quit the space program as soon as I could. I took a quiet desk job in a completely unrelated field. I told my wife nothing, which drove a wedge between us. The nightmares, the sudden panicked episodes. I became a haunted man. Eventually, my marriage fell apart. I don't blame her for leaving. The man she married effectively died on the moon, even if his body came back. For decades, I avoided the night sky. I'd flinch when I saw the moon, especially during the new moon, when the far side faces us. Sometimes on those nights, I swear I could feel something looking back. I drank too much, slept too little. More than once, I almost picked up the phone to call a journalist or write an anonymous letter, but fear stopped me every time. Fear of consequences, yes, but also fear of that memory. Speaking it aloud would make it real again. And I wasn't sure I could handle that. But I'm out of time now. The doctors tell me my body is failing. Too many years of stress and quiet alcoholism, perhaps. Or maybe the radiation exposure out there planted a seed that's killing me now. Either way, I'll be gone soon. The guilt of staying silent is heavier than ever, because the world is gearing up to return to the moon. New missions, new plans to set foot where we did. God help them. They have no idea what's waiting on the far side. So here it is. Everything we saw, everything that happened. I've spilled it all, like a confession hoping for absolution. Believe me or don't, just remember my words. We are not alone on the moon. On the far side, in that perpetual silence, something ancient and bizarre watches over its domain. We trespassed, and it punished us, toyed with our minds. It might be a guardian, or a prisoner, or something beyond our understanding entirely. We sought knowledge, and like the All-Father Odin at Mimir's well, we paid a terrible price for a taste of it. Operation Mimir, how fitting the name turned out to be. Before she lost her sanity, Elena managed to say something to me during a brief moment of clarity. I had been sitting at her bedside in the hospital, years ago. She suddenly grabbed my hand, her eyes boring into mine, and she whispered, "It showed me the darkness between the stars, so cold, so old." Then she began screaming until the orderlies sedated her. I never fully learned what she meant, but I have my theories. I think the orb, or whatever intelligence was behind it, showed her a glimpse of itself or its origin. Perhaps a place where starlight goes to die. I know how this all sounds, like the ravings of a man broken by fear. Maybe I'm broken, but every word is true to the best of my recollection. In the end, only 2 of us returned from that mission, and only one of us could still speak, and now I have spoken. If you're listening to this, please, heed my warning. There are things out there in the universe we are not ready to face, lurking even in places we thought lifeless. The far side of the moon is not empty. If you ever find yourself gazing up at a clear night sky when the moon is new, and you notice an area where the stars seem to vanish, a patch of darkness that wasn't there before, be afraid, because that might mean the lights have left the moon and come to visit. Don't go looking for the secrets of that silent crater. Some secrets will find you instead. And I promise you don't want to meet the light that devours the stars. I have carried this horror in silence for over 40 years. Now it belongs to you. May God forgive me, and may God help us all. Some lights guide us home, others erase the sky.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained, and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.